The People's Coalition for Civil Action has indicated that the Revitalized Agreement on the Resolution of Conflict in South Sudan, RRCAS, has been an obstacle to peace and democracy within the country. This has led them to establish communication with the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD. Join us as we discuss this and more only on Beyond the Headlines. We are joined on the program by Mr. Awolich, the former managing director of the Sudd Institute, who is also among the leaders of the People's Coalition for Civil Action. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
The People's Coalition for Civil Action has been engaging with organizations at the grassroots level. What form of engagement has been taking place and what do you hope to achieve?
Thank you very much. We have been engaging civil society groups, organizations, to try to create more awareness about civic engagement and what it means to be an active citizen that cares about what is going on in his or her country. And so we have been engaging different unions, different organizations, to try to strengthen the capacity of civil society, which is the fourth arm of any republic. So that include media, that include the churches, that include community organizations, that include trade unions, and youth and women organizations. So that they become more active and involved in the affairs of the country. And so that, because that is by definition what sovereignty means, is when citizens are guiding the discourse and the political direction of their country. That's when you can say people are sovereign. So that has been the level of engagement we have had. And also, being able to try to generate specialized trainings for people to understand what nonviolent civic engagement means. Because we care deeply about people not being violent, and being civil means you can talk, but you don't have to really be hateful when you are talking, and you don't really have to be violent when you are talking. And you don't really have to generalize or point fingers when you are talking, but you can raise issues that are affecting all sectors of our society instead of your own sector of the society. So those are the engagements we have had so far. Thank you.
Now, we know that in a militarized institution, it is very hard to have nonviolent communication with any entity. I know the concept emanated from people like Mahatma Gandhi as well as Martin Luther King Jr. So how can that be achieved in a militarized society?
Well, I can tell you that people are actually doing nonviolent action every day. For example, a few weeks ago, when the new hotel was open in Juba, one of our citizens who observed something that was not right, took a picture of somebody's bill, somebody who went to that hotel and took a lot of drinks costing 631,000 pounds. And he felt that this was wrong. There are people starving out there, and one person in one shot is spending nearly over £500,000 drinking, and took that photo and shared it, and people were outraged. That is nonviolent action. So really, nonviolent doesn't really have to be anything massive or serious, but an action that people take every day to protest an abnormal behavior of public officials is what we call nonviolent action. And so also recently people have been expressing their unhappiness with the dredging of the rivers. That is also non-violent action. What you are doing now, the fact that you and I are talking on this platform, is also a non-violent action. So there are so many ways you can actually do non-violence without causing any problems at all. And so it is already happening in South Sudan, despite the fact that people are militarized.
You know, an institution could take that as just for instance, the person taking the picture from the hotel, just a slight form of agitation, nothing that should be considered serious. So you believe that that in itself constitutes a form of nonviolence?
Absolutely. You know, how many people learn about that? Although it could be considered, because he is taking that picture and sharing it in the context of people starving in Juba. And to say, is it fair for our society to have some people living lavishingly in the country while there are people who are scraping the surface to survive? This is unfair. And that is the statement that person was trying to make. And it angers a lot of people that this could happen. So really, from our perspective, those are the forms of nonviolent action that we talk about. It doesn't cause harm to an individual, or it doesn't disrupt the flow of the society, but it does make a statement that we need to be better in sharing as a country.
You recently established communication with the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD. Among its key missions, IGAD aims to promote regional cooperation and integration to add value to member states, which includes South Sudan. What was the purpose of initiating the communication with IGAD?
Well, thank you very much. We know that IGAD had played an instrumental role in, first of all, the realization of the independence of South Sudan. IGAD was the host and the mediator of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. And of course, when our country got disrupted in 2013 with political violence, IGAD also intervened and negotiated the 2015 agreement. And when it collapsed in 2016, they came back to mediate and secured the 2018 peace agreement, which is being implemented now. Our purpose in communicating with IGAD was to, from the perspective of ordinary citizens, to communicate to them that the peace agreement is not being implemented the way it was conceived. It has actually become an obstacle to peace. And our purpose is to create, sound an alarm to the regional body that the transitional period is coming to an end, and the objectives, the core objectives of the peace agreement are not met. And that is, the purpose of the agreement was to bring peace. Mind you, peace is not on the piece of paper. It's not the agreement that is written. It is actually what happens among ordinary people's daily lives. We have not seen peace, and we have not seen unity, which are the two primary objectives of the peace agreement. And so we are trying to say that that being the case, and we are reaching an end to this agreement, which was hoped that it was going to put the country on the path so that it can go back to democracy. Those objectives are not met. So what should be the option? Should we just continue to assume that this thing is working, only to realize at the very last minute that it's not working? Yeah, so that was our purpose. It was to alert IGAD and to actually suggest that there is a need before the end of the transitional period for South Sudan to enter a new political dialogue that goes far beyond the confines of the peace agreement. So that was the purpose of our communication. We didn't want to wait until the last minute to realize that things are not what they seem to be.
And did you receive feedback from IGAD?
We did not receive any formal feedback, even though we have communicated with individuals from IGAD, acknowledging receipt of our communication, and also acknowledging some of the challenges that we raised in the letter. For example, one of the things that we raised in the communication is that for a peace agreement to be successful, its violation must be made difficult and expensive. However, in the case of the revitalized peace agreement, it doesn't cost the violator anything because there are no grantors to the agreement. So the stronger party could do whatever it wants with it and nothing will happen. And we said that is a failure on the side of IGAD.
How about sanctions itself?
You mean the UN sanctions or what are the sanctions?
Yes. Can the sanctions act as a deterrent?
That could be, but the most important deterrent to any agreement is that it has to cost the other party something significant for violating the peace agreement. Say, for example, in the case of the CPA, the international community was very strong on imposing costs on any party that was going to violate the peace agreement, and that could include sanctions, that could include criminal charges. In this case, and that also could, and the SPLA also was a deterrent. So if the parties agreed, if they violate the peace agreement, war was the most expensive option. And so all those elements together shape the way forward with regards to the implementation of the CPA. But with the revitalized peace agreement, none of those exist. And so what has happened now is that the stronger party has co-opted and beat the other parties into submission. And therefore they are doing what the stronger party wants them to do, but not what the peace agreement wants them to do and what the people of South Sudan want them to do.
As you've noted, there has been ongoing discussions by the government, and the SPLM party has been visiting different states to drum up support for when the elections take place. In your opinion, will the elections actually take place, or this is just a form of propaganda?
Absolutely. It is a charade. There is no election. It is a project. These days in South Sudan, people are so broke. And so one way you can make a little cash here and there is to come up with fancy or fantastical projects that have no reality in them. And so the recent movement around by the SPLM leaders trying to drum up support for election is nothing but a bluff. There is nothing in it. And obviously, if you want to have an election, the first step is you have to open up political space for the other parties also to do the same. If the SPLM-IO wanted to do the same, and SOA and other political parties, of course, they would not allow it. And so there is no election because we know election is supposed to happen on the 22nd of December this year. The electoral law has not been amended. The electoral commission has not been reconstituted, and so really you cannot be talking about an election when you don't have a body that can organize elections in place. So there may be elections, 2 to 3 to 4, 5 years from now, but not within the time frames of the revitalized peace agreement. It's just a show and an opportunity to make a little bit of money for the party.
The SPLM party has stated that they have given Riek Machar, leader of the SPLM-IO, massive opportunities to declare himself a candidate for presidency in the upcoming elections, but yet he has not gone ahead and made any declarations. So they're saying that he's the one who is not really taking the initiative to initiate any form of assertiveness when it comes to the upcoming elections as it relates to the SPLM-IO making its presence known?
Well, the SPLM-IO and all the other parties are essentially caged. They are not free. So Dr. Riek Machar cannot travel to Ye or Wau or Malakal freely to mobilize his troops. So really, there is no political space in South Sudan for anyone to make such a declaration. That would be making a fool of oneself. And so they know exactly what they are talking about. Who wouldn't want to declare himself way in advance so that people could know and be able to campaign? Dr. Riek Machar knows that there is no political space for such, and there is no political will and interest to allow for an election that is free and fair to go forward. And so we really are not in favor of conducting an election right now because we really don't have that space where you could say you could really have a democratic contest. There is no political space. So open up the political space, both civic and political spaces, to create that environment and work on the implementing the peace agreement. Deploy the army. You don't even have one army. So the army is divided. So who is going to guard the election? Who is going to safeguard the election? The integrity of an election is a process, not an event. And so you and to be more specific, the government cannot afford an election right now. They cannot organize it. They just don't have the money to do it. If they cannot pay their own employees, and you have heard this week the parliamentarians were on strike, and because they have not been paid for months, and somehow because they have realized that any protest in South Sudan because of the environment that we have created as PCCA, they are very uncomfortable with anybody trying to protest, so they paid off the parliamentarians very quickly, and we cannot afford an election now.
Senator Patrick Leahy, who is among the top and well-known politicians in U.S., who has played an integral as well as an instrumental role in voicing concerns raised by the People's Coalition for Civil Action, will soon be retiring and will no longer be a senator in the U.S. Congress. What impact will his retirement have on the work you are carrying out? And are you hopeful the person who replaced Senator Leahy will be active in the activities of the People's Coalition for Civil Action?
Well, that is a very good question. And first of all, I want to personally thank Senator Leahy for his care and his interest in the welfare of ordinary South Sudanese people. This is a man who had supported John Garang during our struggle for our independence. And he knows what John Garang had intentions to do in South Sudan. And he's not identifying with what is happening right now, which is the very reason why he had to speak out. I can assure you that there are so many American senators and members of Congress who care so deeply about South Sudan and who have recently, by a vote of 100% in the Senate, voted on a resolution that express concern about what is going on in South Sudan. And so that goes to show you that if you get 100% number of senators voting on an issue unanimously, it means they agree on that issue. The reason Senator Leahy has been speaking up alone is because he's the president of the Senate, is a president pro tem. And so he's an authority of his own. So he can speak on South Sudan without inquiring the signature of other senators. But once he's gone, there will be a team of bipartisan senators and members of Congress who will be following up on these issues related to South Sudan. They care so deeply, and they know that the people of South Sudan deserve better than what they are seeing now. So that is what I can tell you. So it is not only the replacement of Senator Lay that will be speaking on matters related to South Sudan. There will be a whole lot of other senators.
Who are some of the other U.S. senators who care deeply about issues concerning South Sudan?
Well, I have not been permitted to talk about them, so I would rather not name individuals, but we have a lot of allies, especially in the Foreign Relations Committee and other areas, people who have followed issues related with South Sudan for their entire Senate careers. And so those people are still there. We also have people in the US government and other parts of the world who have cared so much about what is going on in South Sudan. And so they will continue to care, and they will continue to express their views so that the people of South Sudan are able to set their country on the right track. Right now, we are off-road. We are basically traveling in unknown, uncharted territory. And so the rest of the world is simply asking us to come back to the main road, and that is the road to peace and stability.
As of recent, there have been talks of the resumption of the Jonglei Canal and now the planned dredging of some of the tributaries of the Nile River. What is the position of the People's Coalition for Civil Action on this critical matter that will not only affect the population of South Sudan, but also the ecosystem?
Yeah, we are vehemently opposed to any dredging of the rivers or any resumption of Jonglei Canal. And by the way, it is the least of the priorities of the people of South Sudan. They claim that the reason the floods happen is because the rivers are silted is a lie. There will always be floods in South Sudan, and there will always be droughts because there is climate change. We all need to come to terms with that. Climate change is happening, and the only term that is appropriate to use when you are talking about climate change is adaptation. We need to adapt to that situation. And one way to adapt to that situation is to begin to move people to the higher grounds in times of floods, and to bring people to the lower grounds in times of drought, so that we are able to sustain our livelihood. We have to live with the nature, and we should be thankful that we have a lot of water, even though it has been very destructive. The whole of East Africa is facing severe droughts now in Ethiopia, in Somalia, in Kenya, and even part of Eastern South Sudan in Kapoita. So the rest of the region has no water, and water is life. Yes, it does. So really, if you begin, because the fear we have is that if you study the water system, the waterway system in South Sudan, you realize that all the rivers in Bahr el Ghazal, any river west of the Nile, all the tributaries, they all converge into what they call the Bahr el Ghazal River in Bentiu. So, and we are talking about Bahr el Nam here, we are talking about Pai, which is Yei River, we are talking about Lol, we are talking about Jur River, we are talking about so many other rivers, Tonj, all of them, including Bahr al Arab, which is Key River, which passes through Abiy, all of them, they all converge in Bentiu. And then they flow up and meet up with the Nile, also in Unity State. And then they combine together with Sobat, and then they flow north to Malakal. So what dredging simply means, hydrologically, I'm not a scientist, or I'm not an engineer, but what will happen is that they will dig the river in Bentiu deep, which will create a slope and will speed up the flow of the water from all the other rivers. And what that does to Egypt, because Egypt has lost water from the Blue Nile because of the Renaissance Dam, it will increase the volume of water flowing north. Now, our fear is that, what about those rivers? What will happen? It means they will flow so fast that they will not have time to feed the swamps. So the swamps, which are those are the sources of life for our people, for cattle and for people fishing. Those swamps will dry up, and in the long run, reduce the volume of rain. And of course, you will have no water. And you could possibly get into a situation of desert. And so these are, you are talking about 30, 50, 40 years. Maybe in 2022, nothing will happen. But in 2025, you will begin to see the impact. So we are saying, first of all, it is not because the rivers are shallow that we have floods. It is because there is so much rain pouring down at the same time because of climate change. It is not that because the rivers are blocked somewhere. No, we are just receiving so much amount of rainfall at once. And that is why the water is flooding the space. And so digging the rivers has nothing to do with the control of the floods. We will continue to have floods in South Sudan, even if you were to dredge the river. But you would have drained all the other sources of water downstream, where the water is coming from. That's why we are opposed to that dredging, and we are saying this is not a South Sudanese project. We have no intention to do that. We don't need Jonglei Canal, nor do we need the dredging of the rivers. It is another country's own project, another country's own priorities. Why are we serving the interests and purpose of another country? That's why we have asked people of South Sudan to reject this project entirely.
Lastly, what is the way forward now for the People's Coalition for Civil Action? What is your next plan or initiative?
Well, we continue to do what we call awareness raising. We are raising awareness about the people of South Sudan's right to, and their sovereign power to actually take responsibility to shape the next step within the history of South Sudan. We have given our leaders 17 years to figure out how to move the country out of poverty, out of violence, out of corruption, out of ethnic divisions, and they have spectacularly failed to do that. So we continue to raise awareness that the future of South Sudan rests in the hands of its ordinary citizens, and that they should begin to demand that the leaders give way to a future that people desire and future that they want. And so that is what we are trying to do. We'll continue to mobilize and organize, continue to speak out on issues that people cannot speak about because of fear. So we are moving on very well. We are also conducting trainings for our citizens to understand the values of nonviolent action, and that our country, the quickest way our people have come to address their issues, if they are unhappy with the government, they take up arms, go to the bush, kill a lot of their own citizens, and then negotiate with the government. We are declaring that as a violent means. We should stop doing that. We could simply, like the parliamentarian did, they said, we need to be paid. Where is our salary? If you don't give it to us, we are not going to work. And the government would respond. That is basically nonviolent action. And that is the type of action that we encourage to do.
We've been joined on the program by Mr. Abraham Awolich, one of the leaders of the People's Coalition for Civil Action. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me, and my regards and greeting to all the listeners.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page at Sunrise Media.